So even though we are not in the Middle East, the colonial occupation of Palestine by Israel is a threat to our own independence and the exercise of our own sovereignty. Comrades and friends, there are many reasons why this discussion is very, very important. And one of the first reasons why this discussion is so very important is just that what happens today is rooted in what happened yesterday. And what happens today is the basis for what is going to happen tomorrow. And in this connection, we recall the great strides that were made in fomenting, developing friendship between the Chinese people and the African people by great names in history, like Chairman Mao, like Premier Chu Enlai, Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Modibo Keita, amongst many others, who saw that the struggles of the Chinese people and the struggles of the African people were inextricably linked, and that we can only move forward together to victory after victory. This is one of the bases why we feel so happy and proud to be amongst you today. Again, it is important to recognize that throughout most part of recent history, the enemies of the African people, those who obstruct the development of the African people, are the very people who seek to impose war and hatred on the Chinese people. Today, those who are fighting us, who are fighting our efforts to build independent and united continent, are the same people who are pushing forward the idea of two Chinas. They are the same people who are using Taiwan as an excuse to wage a senseless war on Chinese civilization and to bring us back. This must be a joint commitment which brings us together. We are also undoubtedly convinced that our task is to build a new world, to construct a new world. A new world in which the resources of the world will not be used to promote weapons of mass destruction. A new world in which the resources of the world will be utilized to make sure that we fight hunger, illiteracy, disease, and so on. This is a joint commitment that we can explore further. Today we look around Africa, and interestingly, the people of Africa suffer excruciating poverty. You look around Africa, access to education is so very limited. You look around Africa, and the African people are no longer able to own their resources and to exploit these resources for their own benefit. The question has often been asked, how come that a continent which has 60% of the arable lands of the world is not able to feed itself? How come that in spite of the population of Africa, in spite of the role that Africa has played throughout the history of mankind, Africa has no seat at the United Nations? How come that today our people have no access to electricity, in spite of the fact that we have the resources which can and must enable our people to enjoy electricity everywhere they are? Of course, the answer to this question lies in the fact of our history and our present. And if you look at our history, there is no doubt at all that over a long period of time, over 100 years, our people was captured as beasts of burden to work the fields to build the basis of today's capitalism. There is no doubt at all that our people were subjected to colonial exploitation. And there's no doubt at all that our people today are victims of neo-colonial exploitation. That is only one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that we are being told, and our leaders are listening to this cock and bull story, that the only way the African people can develop is to adopt the models of the capitalist states. That if you want to move forward, we have to be like Germany. If you want to move forward, we have to be like Britain. If we want to move forward, we have to be like the United States of America. There is no way the African people can develop on this basis. And it's clear. First, capitalism today benefited extensively from the slave trade, which provided free labor to build the world on which capitalism is built today. Today, which people in the world can we go and capture as slaves to work for us for hundreds of years without pay? That option is not available to us. And it's only an illusion to think that that option is available to us. Today, the African people cannot colonize any other people in order to take control of their resources and exploit these resources for advancement. That option is also closed to us. The option which is open to the African people is to struggle, first and foremost, to own our own resources and to exploit our own resources for our own benefit. We have no option than an independent, self-reliant development within the framework of Pan-African unity. That is the only option available to us. And to this extent, we are happy to note that China has made great strides in towing the path of independent, self-reliant development. The millions of people taken out of poverty in China is the clearest indication that the Chinese system works. We are also happy to engage with our comrades from China for one reason, and it's a very important reason. And this reason is that throughout our relations with China, China has never told us to copy their model. China has insisted that every people anywhere have a right to determine their own path. They have a right to determine their own destiny. This is in sharp contrast to the Western countries, which insist that we have to adopt their model. And when we refuse to adopt their model, they organize coups d'etat to overthrow our leaders, they kill our leaders, they impose sanctions on us, and make life unbearable. This difference is a very important difference that we must recognize. I have no doubt at all that all around the world, there is some very strong interest in the developments in West Africa. Indeed, only yesterday, we had information that another coup attempt had begun in Burkina Faso. And the coup d'etats are spreading, especially across the West African region. Many people have asked, why these coup d'etats? The answer is very simple. The peoples of Africa are waking up. The peoples of Africa are waking up to the reality that they suffer imposition of systems, of ideas, and so on. And that the only way they can break out of this stranglehold is to begin to reject their neo-colonial leaders and to build people's power, leading to the establishment of mass democratic people's revolutions across the continent. Of course, coup d'etats have their limitations. They do not have a basis in mass democratic organization and so on. But in a situation where people's free expression has been suppressed, in a situation where elections have been reduced to a farce and so on, what do we do as African people? So these coup d'etats are expressions of the anger of the African people against their continued exploitation and domination by the Western powers. And it is interesting that these have broken out largely in the French-speaking areas of Africa. There are good reasons why they are broken out largely in the French-speaking areas of Africa. And I'll give you just a few examples. One, all French-speaking African countries by some arrangement, are compelled to keep their foreign reserves in the Central Bank of France. So when African countries need to have access to their own money for development, they go to France, they borrow their own money, and they pay interest on their own money. This situation is clearly untenable. You take Niger. Niger is the proud reciprocity for uranium. Indeed, today in France, every one out of 3 light bulbs is powered by uranium from Niger. And yet, the people of Niger do not have even 20% access to electricity. Recently, Niger reviewed the prices for which it sold its uranium. And it is shocking that France was paying less than 20% of the value of uranium owned by the Nigerian people. What exploitation is this? What justifies this? It simply doesn't make sense. So, it is also important to note that part of the resistance is against the presence, French military presence, in West Africa. Now, one of the problems is that the French military presence is justified on the grounds that France came into West Africa to help West African countries to fight the jihadist movement. Unfortunately, over the last 10 years, the situation has not improved. The situation keeps getting worse. The jihadists are getting stronger and stronger. In Burkina Faso, up until last year, about 60% of the land territory of Burkina Faso was in the hands of the insurgents. So the farce of the French, of the Western countries assisting West Africa to fight jihadists has collapsed. Nobody believes that story anymore. And indeed, West Africans are getting increasingly convinced that the foreign military presence on West African soil is designed mainly to help the imperialist powers take control of our natural resources. Now, in all of this, I think it's also very, very important for us to recognize that the second largest drone base of the United States of America is stationed on Nigerian soil. Now, it does appear that the focus is on France. And the question has been raised, what about all the other countries which are responsible for our underdevelopment, which are subverting African interests and so on? It would seem to me that there is competition also among these imperialist countries. And they are trying very hard to edge each other out. At a time when France was refusing to accept the new regime in Niger, refusing to take out its ambassador and so on, the United States of America quickly appointed a new envoy to Niger and began talks with the Nigerian authorities. Of course, the US interest in outmaneuvering France can be understood within the context of the fact that it has too much in Niger and does not want to lose its military base in Niger. It would also gladly be the proud controller of uranium in Niger than France. Now, this competition is important for us. I think it's important that we note it, and it's important that we understand it. Because if we don't note it and if we don't understand it, it would impede our own understanding of the global situation and how to move forward. Today, as we speak, the major countries of the world have produced enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world more than 10 times over. I would have thought that one destruction is enough. 10 times destruction is more than insane. And all of us in this world risk a thermonuclear war which will destroy everything that we have ever known. We have a responsibility as communists. We have a responsibility as citizens of this world, responsible citizens of this world, to stand up against war. And in exercising that responsibility, we cannot forget the aggression which is being waged on Russia using Ukraine as a proxy. And it's important for us to stand shoulder to shoulder to ensure that we do not cross that dangerous line which will lead us to a thermonuclear war. It's a collective responsibility of all responsible citizens. Yesterday, I was speaking to my comrades from the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa. And they complained very, very bitterly about the electricity crisis they are suffering in South Africa and the fact that their coal exports and so on are being affected by these new proposals which are being put forward. The people of South Africa, like the people of Ghana, like the people of Benin and so on, we have a right also to exploit our resources to the full in order to solve the problems that we didn't create, which others imposed upon us. We have a duty to ourselves to solve these concrete problems. I spoke earlier about the useful and meaningful collaboration that existed between President Nkrumah, Premier Chu Enlai, and others in our history. Most of that was about intensifying the national liberation struggle in Africa. That battle is not over yet. Now, as has been said in the past by all of our leaders, injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So even though we are not in the Middle East, the colonial occupation of Palestine by Israel is a threat to our own independence and the exercise of our own sovereignty. And therefore, we also stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Palestine. But we are confident that as imperialism was defeated in Vietnam, as imperialism was defeated in the national liberation struggle, we will continue to wreak one defeat after the other on the forces of imperialism. And that is only possible through our collaborative efforts. Let us work together. We can build a new world. We can defeat imperialism. And we can ensure that the one China policy is accepted by the world. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you.